George James Treel was born in 1949 in Florida. He worked as a chemist and computer programmer. He was smart enough to join Mensa, a group for people with high IQs. Even so, he held a long-standing grudge against his neighbors in Alturas, Florida, especially the Carr family. The Carrs lived right next door. Over the years, they clashed with Treel several times. They argued about loud music and barking dogs. Treel saw these issues as constant annoyances. His anger toward them grew deeper with each dispute. In October 1988, Treel decided to act on his anger. He mixed a dangerous chemical called thallium nitrate into 7 bottles of Coca-Cola. This compound had been banned decades earlier because it was used to poison rats. Late one night, Treel slipped the tainted bottles into the Carr's home. Peggy Carr, a 41-year-old waitress, drank some of the soda soon after. She felt very sick. Her legs and feet hurt badly. Doctors rushed her to the hospital, but she slipped into a coma. Peggy did not recover. Several other family members also fell ill. Her son Dwayne Dubberly and stepson Travis Carr struggled with serious symptoms, but survived after a long hospital stay. Months before the poisoning, the Carrs had gotten a scary letter. It warned them to leave Florida or face dire consequences. Investigators found a vial of thallium nitrate in Treel's garage. They also noted things he had said about forcing the Carrs to move. These clues pointed straight to Treel. Digging deeper, investigators learned Treel had tried to harm pets and even classmates. He once smeared hallucinogens on doorknobs and fridge handles. He also hosted a mystery party, where his own booklet described how to poison someone with thallium. All this showed he had the know-how and the plan to harm the Carr family. The prosecution said he had plotted every step in advance. During the trial, Treel offered no witnesses. He claimed he was innocent. The jury did not agree. They found him guilty on every count. Taking Peggy's life, 6 counts of attempts to take more lives, 7 counts of tampering with food or drink, and 1 count of tampering with a consumer product. In February 1991, the judge gave Treel capital punishment. The jury had voted 9-3 in favor of this sentence. Treel also received 30 years in prison for each of the other counts, to run at the same time. As of May 2025, George James Treel is incarcerated at Union Correctional Institution in Rayford, Florida. The next individual was removed from a house he didn't own, so he went back, with baseball bats, a plan, and no mercy. Troy Victorino was born in 1977. His early years were unstable and often harsh. He suffered physical, emotional, and inappropriate acts during childhood, mostly from his father. Even so, he finished school and earned a reputation as a good student. He did struggle with his mental health and with drinking, issues that later came up in court. Victorino's run-ins with the law began in his teens. At 16, he was found guilty of taking a car without permission. He served 4 years in a youth facility, then 2 years confined at home. He expressed regret and said he wanted to turn things around, but he kept getting into trouble and returned to custody more than once. On August 6, 2004, a violent incident shocked Deltona, Florida. Victorino and 3 friends, Jerome Hunter, Robert Cannon, and Michael Salas, broke into a home on Telford Lane. 6 people inside lost their lives. They were struck repeatedly with baseball bats, and some were also with a sharp weapon. A pet dachshund was also taken. What drove them was anger and revenge. Victorino had been living without permission in a house owned by Bélanger's grandmother. When Erin discovered this, she had him removed and collected his belongings, including an Xbox. Victorino felt furious. He persuaded his friends to help him recover his things and to make sure no one could speak up against him. The scene showed clear signs of struggle. Shoe prints matched Victorino's boots, and DNA tied him to the spot. He claimed he was at a nightclub when it happened, but investigators found that story didn't add up. His trial opened in July 2006. He faced 6 counts of first-degree homicide and related charges. The jury found him guilty on every count. In the punishment phase, jurors recommended life in prison for 2 of the charges, and capital punishment for the other 4. The judge agreed and noted both how severe the wrongdoing was and Victorino's role in planning it. Did his mental health come up during sentencing? Yes. The defense presented records of his childhood trauma, and of his struggles with mental health and heavy drinking. But the court ruled those factors didn't outweigh how serious the incident had been. In 2017, the parts of his sentence calling for the harshest punishment were overturned. The state Supreme Court said such a sentence requires every juror's agreement. Prosecutors said they would seek that punishment again. As of May 2025, Victorino remains in a Florida prison, awaiting a new sentencing hearing. Now let's move to the story of an escaped inmate whose actions turned a parking lot into a horror scene. Anthony Floyd Waywright was born in 1970. We know little about his childhood. Court records show that he served time in North Carolina for burglary before 1994. April 27, 1994. Carmen Gayhart was just 23, a nursing student, a mother of two. That afternoon she was doing something ordinary, loading groceries into her car in a Lake City, Florida parking lot. She never made it home. Two men, Waywright and Richard Hamilton, had just escaped from a prison in North Carolina. Armed and desperate, they spotted Carmen and approached her. A gun was drawn. She was forced into her own Ford Bronco. They drove her to a remote location. There, the horror escalated. Carmen was forced into a degrading act. Then, they choked her until her body went still. As if that wasn't enough, they shot her twice in the head. The next day, across state lines in Mississippi, police caught up to them. A shootout broke out. Both men were eventually taken into custody. During questioning, Waywright admitted everything. He told officers he was HIV positive. He also claimed Hamilton was the one who choked and eventually shot her. They were sent back to Florida and tried one by one. In May 1995, a jury found Waywright guilty. On June 12, 1995, a judge set his penalty as capital punishment using the electrical method. Florida's highest court agreed with the verdict and sentence in 1997. Waywright asked for new hearings and filed habeas petitions over the years. All were denied. In July 2023, the Federal Appeals Court ruled that fresh DNA evidence did not change anything. In April 2024, the U.S. Supreme Court refused to review his case. On May 10, 2025, Governor Ron DeSantis signed the official order. Waywright's date for the court-ordered penalty is set for June 10, 2025. The next man talked about dark fantasies. No one took him seriously until the bodies started turning up. Frank Athen Walls was born in 1967 in Ocean City, Florida. We know very little about his family or childhood. Records show he started wrongful actions when he was still a teenager. These included break-ins, invasion of privacy, and mistreating animals. At that time, he worked as a dishwasher at a restaurant called Quincy's. He shared a home with Thomas Animal Farnham. Farnham later said Walls often talked about violent scenarios. Between 1985 and 1987, Walls carried out a series of offenses in Okaloosa County, Florida. In these events, 5 people lost their lives. He used both guns and sharp weapons. His main aim was theft and, in some cases, intimate reasons. Walls' first known target was a 19-year-old woman who was targeted while sunbathing on a beach. Investigators later discovered she had been approached by Walls and didn't survive the encounter. His next known victims were a couple in their 60s during a break-in at their mobile home. Then came a series of other incidents. One woman was found near a roadside, another inside her home, with signs of forced entry. The final 2 victims were a young couple who had just returned home. What began as a break-in quickly escalated. In several cases, Walls used both sharp weapons and firearms. Some victims were tied up. In one instance, he fled with stolen items like a fan, a wallet, and a radio. Each scene was clean, almost too clean. Walls left behind so little physical evidence that detectives initially struggled to connect the cases. It wasn't until his roommate reported strange behavior that investigators began to piece it all together. On July 24, 1987, police arrested Walls at the age of 19. Investigators had linked him to the scenes through forensic tests and statements from witnesses. DNA comparison was key in tying him to one of the incidents, and that led him to admit involvement in the others. At trial, Walls was found guilty on 3 counts of the most serious level of homicide. He was also convicted for 2 break-ins and 1 count of holding someone against their will. In 1991, he received a capital sentence for one of the homicides. That verdict was later overturned, so he faced a new trial in 1994. The second trial ended with the same capital sentence. As of May 2025, Frank Athen Walls remains in a high-security unit at Union Correctional Institution in Rayford, Florida. But what drives someone to take 2 lives in a single day? Just because they felt like it. Wade Stephen Wilson was born in 1994 in Florida. His father was 15 and his mother was 14 at the time. He was adopted by Steve and Candace Wilson and grew up in Tallahassee. He went to Chillis High School. From a young age, he had behavior problems. He got involved in minor wrongdoing and used substances. He also suffered 4 concussions as a child and teen. He later said those injuries made him unstable. His first encounters with the law began in Leon County back in 2012, when he was charged with breaking and entering, weapons violations, and other serious misconduct. By November 2013, he was sentenced to prison for burglary and major theft, serving about a year behind bars. In 2015, he went to trial for allegations involving unlawful confinement and non-consensual contact, but the jury found him not guilty. Then in 2017, he returned to prison after being caught with stolen firearms, staying locked up until mid-2018. But 2 years later, things went downhill. On October 7th, 2019, he caused 2 women to lose their lives within hours of each other. The first victim was Christine Melton, 35. He met her at a live music bar, and later that night ended her life inside her own home. Just hours later, he approached Diane Ruiz, a 43-year-old mother of 2 and bartender, with a fake story to lure her into Melton's car. There, he took her life as well, and then ran her over multiple times. He later told his biological father, Stephen Testaseca, that he committed these fatal actions simply for the sake of doing it. After the incidents, he phoned his father to confess. His father and stepmother alerted police, and Wilson was arrested the next day. During questioning, he admitted what he had done and said he would do it again. At trial, a neurologist testified that brain scans showed damage that could explain some of his impulsive acts. But the prosecution experts argued that his ongoing substance use was a bigger factor. His biological father also spoke in court. He described the confession and said his son ran over Ruiz after he saw she had not passed away yet. Wilson himself said, "I just wanted to do it," without offering any other motive. More than 8 jurors recommended a capital sentence for each victim. Judge Nicholas Thompson imposed 2 capital sentences. While awaiting his final hearing, Wilson covered his face in tattoos, including a swastika under his right eye. In 2020, he and a cellmate tried to tamper with a window in an escape attempt. Wilson reportedly planned the whole effort and even tried to arrange a getaway vehicle. In 2023, he pleaded no contest to bringing illegal substances into prison. In return, charges related to the escape attempt were dropped. He was fined and given a 12-year term to run alongside his capital sentences. As of August 2024, he is held at Union Correctional Institution in Rayford, Florida. He remains there while authorities prepare to carry out his capital sentences. The next man always wanted to hurt people. The question is, why that day, that place, and those women? Zephan Allen Zver was born in 1997 in Plymouth, Indiana. He spent his childhood in nearby Bremen. He moved back and forth between his mother's home and his father's home. From an early age, he struggled with his feelings. By age 9, he said he wanted to end his life. By 12, he said he felt urges to harm others. His family took him to many counseling sessions and to treatment centers for behavior issues. Doctors put him on mood-stabilizing medication. His mother stopped that treatment when she thought he was doing better. As a teenager, his actions grew more concerning. He was expelled from school after he wrote a note that threatened a teacher. He often visited the school nurse, saying he felt nervous and very tired. His grades fell. He failed most of his classes. In 2016, he tried joining the U.S. Army. He left basic training early after he told officers he had thoughts of hurting people. In 2018, he moved to Sebring, Florida, hoping to start fresh. He got a job training to work at Avon Park Correctional Institution. After 2 months, and just before what happened next, he quit that position. On January 23, 2019, he walked into the SunTrust Bank in Sebring at about 12:30 p.m. He carried a 9mm handgun and wore a bulletproof vest. He ordered 5 women, 4 bank workers and 1 customer, to lie face down on the floor. Then he shot each of them in the head. None of them survived. Right after, he called 911 to report what he had done. A SWAT team came. After a short standoff, he gave himself up without anyone else being harmed. No clear reason has ever come to light. He did not know the women. Before going to the bank, he sent a text to his girlfriend that said, "I'm taking a few people with me because I've always wanted to do this kind of harm." At first, he said he was not responsible. On March 14, 2023, he changed his plea to guilty. He wrote a note to say he regretted what happened. He said he was sorry for what he did to the victims and their families. He wished he could undo it. In June 2024, his case moved to the punishment phase. The jury voted 9-3 for the most severe penalty under Florida law. On December 16, 2024, Circuit Judge Angela Cowden ordered him to face that punishment. She described his actions as planned and cruel. Family members spoke at the hearing. Kiara Lopez, daughter of Marisol Lopez, said her mother had greeted him with a smile when he walked in. Instead, he forced her to lock the doors and then harmed her. Michael Cook, husband of Deborah Cook, said he felt no sympathy for Zver and wished he could carry out the sentence himself. As of May 2025, Zephan Zver is still waiting for his final sentence to be carried out in Florida. The next man said he was ambushed. Police said he staged it all. But after nearly 50 years, the evidence is telling a new story. On the evening of December 24, 1975, an unsettling event took place at the W.T. Ziggler furniture store in Winter Garden, Florida. 4 people were found lifeless. Eunice Ziggler, Tommy's wife, had been shot. Virginia Edwards, Eunice's mother, was also shot. Perry Edwards, Eunice's father, suffered fatal blows. Charlie Mays, a customer, suffered the same. Tommy Ziggler was at the scene with a bullet wound to his abdomen. He said he had been hurt during a theft attempt. He said the people who came to steal had shot him. Investigators quickly looked at Ziggler as the main suspect. Prosecutors said Ziggler had arranged the fatal acts to collect $500,000 from insurance policies he took out on his wife. They also claimed he shot himself to pretend he was a victim. At trial, witnesses spoke against Ziggler. Edward Williams, a handyman, said Ziggler had tried to shoot him, but the gun failed. Felton Thomas said Ziggler took him and Mays to an orange grove to fire guns. He said Ziggler did this to get their fingerprints on the weapons. The jury recommended life terms for Ziggler. But Judge Maurice M. Paul gave Ziggler capital punishment. This was controversial. Judge Paul had testified against Ziggler in a different case. People questioned if the trial was fair. Over the years, several problems have come up about Ziggler's conviction. Judge Paul's earlier role raised fairness concerns. In 2013, Felton Thomas said parts of his testimony were not true. He said he had felt forced to speak that way. In 2011, a new witness, Robert Foster, said he saw things that did not match the prosecution's story. For decades, Ziggler fought to have modern DNA tests done on the evidence. In 2022, a judge agreed. The results, released in January 2025, showed no body fluids from the victims on Ziggler's clothes. The tests did show DNA from someone else at the scene. This supports Ziggler's claim that he was the victim of a theft attempt that went wrong. These findings have led many to call for a new trial or to clear Ziggler's name. As of May 2025, Ziggler remains in prison under a sentence that could lead to the state's most severe penalty. He keeps saying he is innocent and asks for a new trial based on the DNA evidence. The next individual was in jail for shooting his son, but a simple DNA swab revealed something far darker. Joseph Adam Zeller was born in 1962. He lived in Cape Coral, Florida. In 1990, he was 28. He had been arrested before for dealing in stolen items. He also faced charges for striking a police officer and for carrying a hidden weapon. None of these cases led to major prison time, so they did not stop him. His personal life was unstable. He had a son named Zachary. Their relationship was tense. In 2016, during an argument, Zeegler shot Zachary with a pellet gun. He was charged with causing serious harm and held in jail. While there, authorities took a DNA sample. That sample would later solve a years-old case. On May 10, 1990, Jan Cornell returned to her apartment in Cape Coral. She found her 11-year-old daughter, Robin Cornell, and her 32-year-old roommate, Lisa Story, who had passed. Both had been forced into unwanted contact and then suffocated. The scene was shocking. An ironing board was set up. Photos of Robin lay on it. The setup showed careful planning by the person responsible. The night before, Jan had spent time at her boyfriend's house. She had left Lisa to watch Robin. When Jan discovered the scene, she called the police right away. Investigators collected DNA, but the technology of the time could not match it to anyone. The case went cold and stayed unsolved for 26 years. In 2016, Zeegler was in jail for the pellet gun incident. A DNA test under Florida law matched his sample to the one taken in 1990. This match led to his arrest for the passings of Robin and Lisa. Why did it take so long to find him? In 1990, DNA tools were basic and not widely used. Evidence was preserved, and advances in science eventually made a match possible decades later. Zeegler's trial began in May 2023. He pleaded not guilty. He said his DNA was there because he once had an intimate relationship with Jan Cornell. Jan denied this strongly. During the trial, Zeegler acted erratically. He wrote the word killer on his teeth with a marker. He mocked Jan with insults. He shouted at the jury and made obscene gestures while on the stand. What did the jury decide? After 3 days of discussion, they found Zeegler guilty of 2 counts of first-degree homicide. They voted 10-2 in favor of a capital sentence. On June 26, 2023, Judge Robert Branning sentenced Zeegler to face capital punishment. During that hearing, Zeegler struck his own attorney, Kevin Shirley, with his elbow. That act showed how unstable he could be. After sentencing, Zeegler was moved to Union Correctional Institution in Rayford, Florida, where he remains under a sentence of capital punishment. Next, meet the husband whose betrayal turned a healing center into a brutal scene. Mark Severs was born in 1971 in the Midwest. He grew up surrounded by cornfields and small towns. In 2003, he married Dr. Teresa Severs. Teresa was a respected holistic physician. They had 2 daughters together. Not long after, the family moved to Bonita Springs, Florida. There, they opened the Restorative Health and Healing Center. On the surface, everything looked fine. Behind closed doors, money worries and arguments piled up. On June 28, 2015, Teresa did not make it home safely. When friends checked on her, they found she'd been struck with a hammer 17 times. She did not survive the injuries. Investigators examined the scene carefully. At first, they had no clear suspect. The case went cold for months. In August of that year, a key witness came forward. Taylor Shoemaker, who was close to one of the men involved, told authorities what she had heard. She said Jimmy Ray Rogers had admitted what happened. She also said Mark Severs had asked Curtis Wayne Wright Jr. to carry out the plan. According to Taylor, Mark feared Teresa would take their daughters and leave him. He told Curtis, "There's no way I win if she stays alive. The only way is for her to be gone." Further review of phone records and messages showed Mark and Curtis had talked just before the incident. They discussed when Teresa would return from a trip and how the home's alarm worked. Curtis and Jimmy drove more than 1,000 miles from Missouri to Florida. They waited at the house. When Teresa walked in, they struck. Curtis Wayne Wright Jr. later admitted his role. He accepted a plea deal that sent him to prison for 25 years. Jimmy Ray Rogers went to trial next. A jury found him guilty of second-degree charges. He received a life in prison term. Mark Severs faced first-degree charges. On December 4, 2019, a jury found him guilty. At his sentencing, he insisted he was innocent. He told the court, "Although a jury found me guilty, I am innocent. I love my wife, Teresa, and our daughters, Josie and Carmi. They have already lost their mommy. Now they might lose their daddy too. I respectfully ask for a life sentence. The loss of Dr. Teresa Sievers stunned the community. What began as a family in crisis ended in tragedy. Mark's choices changed the lives of two little girls forever. This case shows how quickly hopes and plans can fall apart when fear and anger take over. On January 3, 2020, Judge Bruce Kyle imposed the state's most severe penalty. Mark appealed in 2022, but the state Supreme Court let the verdict and penalty stand. But what about someone who used charm to win trust, then left a trail of bodies across state lines? Glenn Edward Rogers was born in 1962 in Hamilton, Ohio. He was one of 7 children. His father, Claude Rogers, worked as a hydropulp operator at the local paper mill. Glenn left junior high school before he turned 16. At 18, he married his 14-year-old girlfriend, Deborah Ann Nix. In 1983, Deborah ended their marriage and said Glenn had physically hurt her. Over the years, Glenn traveled through several states. He used his charm and false stories to win people's trust. Because of this, some people called him the Casanova Killer. He was found guilty of 2 fatal incidents. Tina Marie Cribbs, Florida, 1995. Tina left a bar in Gibsonton, Florida, with Glenn on November 5, 1995. 2 days later, a motel worker found her in a Tampa motel room. She had been struck with a sharp weapon many times. Glenn was stopped in Kentucky while driving Tina's car. He said Tina had lent it to him. In 1997, he was convicted of first-degree taking a life, armed theft, and unauthorized use of a vehicle. He received the ultimate penalty. Sandra Gallagher, California, 1995. Sandra was a 33-year-old mother of 3. She met Glenn at a bar in Van Nuys, California, on September 28, 1995. The next day, her body was found in her truck. She had been harmed and burned. In 1999, Glenn was convicted again and received the ultimate penalty. Investigators also looked into other fatal cases in Mississippi, Louisiana, and Ohio. Glenn once said he had taken nearly 70 lives. He later said he was joking. His court proceedings for the Tina Marie Cribbs case began in 1997. The state showed fingerprints that matched Glenn's on Tina's wallet and in the motel room. Glenn said he was innocent. The jury did not agree, and his ultimate penalty was confirmed. Glenn filed multiple appeals. He argued the evidence was not enough and some witness statements should not have been allowed. All of these requests were denied. In 2025, his lawyers said his own history of childhood trafficking and harm should count in his favor under new rules. On May 9, 2025, the Florida Supreme Court turned down that request. Governor Ron DeSantis then signed a warrant setting Glenn's final penalty date for May 15, 2025, at Florida State Prison in Rayford. This is part of a faster schedule in Florida, with 6 such penalties set for 2025. But happens when a routine traffic stop turns into one of the most devastating moments in Tampa's history? Born on August 24, 1985 in Tampa, Florida, Dante Morris had a rough start. His mother was just 16 and struggling with her own health. His father was shot and passed away when Dante was 2. That case has never been solved. After that, his ailing grandmother helped raise him. He moved between schools as his family situation changed. He also had 2 step-siblings from his mother's next relationship. By 2013, he was a member of the Bloods Street Group and had a 7-year-old son. His aunt, Carolyn Riggins, worked for the Tampa Police Department. In July 2010, she was let go. Investigators found she had hidden details that might have led to Dante's earlier arrest. Between May 18th and June 29th, 2010, Dante carried out several aggressive acts in Tampa. On May 18th, he shot 21-year-old Derek Anderson in the back outside Anderson's mother's home. Witnesses said the two had argued that morning. Anderson was selling illegal substances in what Morris thought was his area. On May 31st, 2010, Morris shot 42-year-old Rodney Jones outside the Cotton Club bar in West Tampa. He was later found guilty and given life with no chance of release, plus 25 extra years. On June 8, 2010, Morris shot 25-year-old Harold Wright on 51st Street. Wright was bringing substances for another dealer. Morris decided to shoot him anyway to send a message to that dealer. The most serious incident happened on June 29, 2010. Morris was riding with his girlfriend, Courtney Brantley, when police stopped their car for a missing tag. Officers David Curtis and Jeffrey Kokab found an outstanding warrant for Morris. When they tried to take him into custody, Morris pulled a gun. He shot both officers in the head. They passed instantly. He then ran away. More than 1,000 officers from 22 agencies searched for him. On July 2, 2010, he was found hiding in a law office in South Tampa. Morris first faced trial for the Rodney Jones case in July 2012. The jury took 5.5 hours to find him guilty. His life sentence with no release and the extra 25 years was confirmed. In November 2013, he went on trial for taking the lives of officers Curtis and Kokab. The trial moved to Orlando to find an unbiased jury. Prosecutors showed dash cam video from Officer Curtis's car. It clearly showed Morris shooting the officers. The jury reached a verdict in just 4 hours, finding him guilty on 2 counts of first-degree homicide. In May 2014, he was given the most severe sentence available. In July 2015, Morris faced another trial for the Derek Anderson case. The jury deliberated for over 14 hours. They found him guilty but also decided he had not used a firearm in that incident. The judge called that finding inconsistent with the verdict, yet Morris was still given the most severe sentence. A 2016 change in Florida law said that a jury must agree unanimously to impose the harshest sentence. Because the jury in the Anderson case had not all agreed, the Florida Supreme Court overturned that sentence in January 2018. Instead of retrying him, the state agreed to change his sentence to life in prison. As of May 2025, Morris remains on row. In 2021, the Florida Supreme Court upheld that sentence because the jury there had reached full agreement. He serves his sentences at Florida State Prison. Markeith Lloyd was born in 1975 in Orlando, Florida. Little is known about his childhood or family. He worked a variety of jobs over the years. On December 13, 2016, Lloyd went to his pregnant ex-partner Sade Dixon's parents' house in Pine Hills, Florida. There, he shot and ended her life. Her brother, Ronald Stewart, was hurt as he tried to help her. They had argued before. In one earlier fight, Lloyd bit Dixon and she needed medical care afterward. After that incident, Lloyd went on the run. On January 9, 2017, police were looking for him at a local Walmart. He came across Lieutenant Deborah Clayton in the parking lot. During their encounter, he shot and ended her life. He then escaped, triggering a large search effort. Authorities found Lloyd on January 17, 2017, when a Walmart shopper spotted him and called the police. During his arrest, Lloyd was hurt and lost an eye. He claimed officers used too much force, but an inquiry cleared them of wrongdoing. Lloyd faced trial for the homicide of Sade Dixon. A jury found him guilty of first-degree homicide. He received a life sentence without any chance of getting out early. In November 2021, Lloyd was also found guilty of first-degree homicide in the passing of Lieutenant Deborah Clayton. During the punishment hearing, the jury agreed he should face the harshest possible sentence. In December 2021, Judge Letitia Marcus handed down that sentence, calling the incident especially cruel. Throughout the trials, Lloyd's lawyers said he was dealing with serious mental health issues. Psychologists testified he had delusional beliefs and could not control his actions. Still, the court decided he was fit to stand trial and did not accept the claim that he was not responsible for his actions at the time. As of May 2025, Lloyd is held at Union Correctional Institution in Florida. He remains there as he goes through additional legal reviews related to his sentence. Brian Frederick Jennings was born in December 1958. By the spring of 1979, he was 20 years old and serving as a Marine in Florida. Not much is known about his early life. Public records are limited, and few details about his family ever surfaced. What did surface was troubling. During his trials, mental health experts noted signs of personality disorders. They also pointed to his long struggle with alcohol and substance use. factors that may have influenced what happened next. On May 11, 1979, in Brevard County, Florida, 6-year-old Rebecca Becky Kanash vanished from her bedroom. Her family was left searching, panicked. No one had seen or heard anything unusual. That night, Jennings had entered the Kanash home without permission. He took Becky from her room and carried her to a remote area on Merritt Island, far from any chance of help. There, in that isolated spot, something terrible happened. Investigators later determined Becky suffered serious head injuries. Her skull was fractured. Jennings then left her in a nearby canal, where she was later found. That same day, Jennings was stopped for a traffic violation in Orange County, Florida. What began as a routine encounter quickly escalated. Officers found items in his vehicle that connected him to Becky's disappearance. He was immediately taken into custody. Jennings faced accusations of first-degree taking of a life, carrying away a minor, forced contact, and burglary. In February 1980, a jury found him guilty on every count. By an 11-1 vote, they opted for the state's ultimate sentence. On May 7, 1980, he received that sentence alongside 4 life terms for the other counts. In 1982, the Florida Supreme Court ordered a new trial because of procedural mistakes around how evidence was handled. At that retrial, Jennings was again found guilty. The jury voted 9-3 for the ultimate sentence. He received it once more and additional life terms. A second retrial occurred in 1986 after further appeals. He was convicted on all counts again. The jury's 11-1 vote led to the ultimate sentence for a third time, plus 3 more life terms. Why were retrials needed? Each one addressed legal errors, questions about which evidence could be used, and other procedural issues. Over many years, Jennings and his attorneys challenged parts of his case. Those appeals were denied at both state and federal levels. As of May 2025, he remains under the ultimate sentence in Florida, waiting for the state to carry it out. Tina LaSonia Brown was born in 1970. Her early life was full of instability and hardship. She was born to a teenage mother and didn't receive proper care from either of her parents. Her home life was unsafe, and she went through serious mistreatment at the hands of her father. Other family members also betrayed her trust. As a teenager, she was exposed to illegal substances. Her household remained chaotic, which added to the emotional toll she experienced growing up. Even with everything she had been through, there's no sign that she had a serious history of breaking the law before the incident that put her in prison. On March 24, 2010, in Ensley, Florida, Tina Brown, her 16-year-old daughter Brittany Miller, and their neighbor Heather Lee invited 19-year-old Audriana Zimmerman to Brown's home. They told her they wanted to fix their broken friendship. But once Zimmerman arrived, things took a dark turn. Inside the house, all 3 of them ganged up on her. They hurt her using a crowbar, used a stun gun on her, and then set her on fire. Despite her injuries, Zimmerman managed to walk nearly a third of a mile to get help. She was taken to the hospital but passed away 16 days later. Why did this happen? It started because of a personal issue. Zimmerman had been involved with Brittany Miller's boyfriend. This created tension and eventually led to a plan for revenge. Heather Lee was the first to go to court. She took a plea deal. She admitted to her role and agreed to testify against the others. In return, she was sentenced to 25 years in prison. Brittany Miller was still a teenager when it happened, so she didn't face the harshest penalty. She admitted to the charges and was given a life sentence without the chance of getting out. Tina Brown went to trial in June 2012. The jury found her responsible for planning and carrying out the act. On June 26, 2012, they unanimously agreed on capital punishment. The court said the act was planned in advance and extremely cruel. Her defense team brought up her difficult childhood and past trauma, but the court said the seriousness of what happened outweighed those factors. Tina Brown has appealed her case several times. All of her requests have been denied, including by the Florida Supreme Court and the U.S. Supreme Court. As of May 2025, she is still in prison. She is currently the only woman on death row in Florida, held at Lowell Correctional Institution. When she was sentenced, Brown spoke to the court. She said, "She died a horrific death, and I was one of the ones who participated in taking her life. She didn't deserve it at all." Onwella